evening, our Money Matters conversation is an annual event, and I know that when I had my own kids going through the process of looking at schools and trying to sort out the financial side of things, not only was I attending because of the work, but it truly helped hearing it even more than once. So depending on where you are with your kids and the grades and so forth, if they're seniors, it's timely because of where the FAFSA timeline is and how colleges set up the whole review of financial information, but it is also helpful, like I said, for younger families as well. We're very fortunate to have a great partnership with Florida Tech and various members of their faculty and staff, one being Mr. Lally, who has supported our program and shared information about financial processes, helping us all understand how the various pieces go together to determine a finance package for a student when they are attending a particular school. So anyway, I thank him for his continued support. And we do have virtual audience members, from what I understand, as well as you all live. And in terms of the materials that he's going to go over, particularly the PowerPoint, don't feel compelled like you have to take notes and so forth, because this is something that, great information, and we will be sharing it through the PowerPoint. I will get it uploaded, or if not through, I may very well do it two ways. One is probably through an attachment on an email, and then perhaps even sharing a link to it in the newsletter. So that will be a resource beyond tonight's presentation too. So very good. Further ado, I will introduce Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Well, with this size crowd, we can actually entertain questions throughout the presentation. We get about 40 or 50 slides. A lot of them are just informational pieces that I'll go through quickly, but I'll be happy to answer questions as we go. One of the things that we're going to talk about, hopefully, is it that way? Yeah, there we go. The agenda tonight, what is financial aid? That's going to be fairly easy. What's the cost of attendance, expected family contribution? These are all terms that we use in the industry and that you should be familiar with once you start looking at colleges and financial aid in particular. Categories and types of financial aid. Then one of the things that I really want to walk away with is a commitment for everybody to get involved and file a FAFSA, free application for federal student assistance. That's what that means. And then special circumstances. We'll talk about that a little bit. Just a show of hands, how many people, seniors, anybody? Okay, great. This is timely for you. As Joe mentioned, this is the FAFSA filing season just opened for seniors. It opens October 1st every year. And it uses, this year we're using 2019 information on the tax return, so you can actually get it done fairly quickly. And we encourage you to start the process as soon as you can. Let's go on. What is financial aid? Actually, it's pretty easy. Funds provided to students and families to help them pay for a post-secondary education. That's not rocket science. What is cost of attendance? That's a little bit more, and what you want to take away from this slide is that it's more than just tuition, room, and board. There's a personal expense, a transportation expense, books and supplies. All those things go into what we call cost of attendance. It's kind of the limiting factor of all the things that we can do for you. That's the most we can get for you. What is excuse me, I haven't used this before, so you'll have to forgive me. What's an expected family contribution? It basically, the FAFSA form will analyze the student and parents' income and assets and come out with I hate to say it's what we expect to pay, because that's not a good way of looking at it. It's really a relative indicator of financial strength, and that's what we do. The FAFSA form will calculate that for us, and then we're going to use it against that cost of attendance. So cost of attendance minus a family contribution equals your documented need, and ideally that's what we're going to try and fill in with all the resources we have available. Need obviously will vary by college. If you look at number one, maybe it's a private school and you're going to live on campus. Number two is maybe the state university, you live on campus. Number three, you might go to Eastern Florida right down the road. All of those have three very different cost scenarios, but theoretically we all use the same family contribution and have a different documented need at each one of those institutions, and each one will try and fill in that need. There are two types of systems out there, or two types of assistance. There is need-based, which the FAFSA is the driver of, And then non-need-based assistance scholarships that are given out on the basis of, most of them on talent, either academic, some are on athletics, some are on music, that type of thing. All those, in this state, the biggest example of a scholarship would be the Bright Futures Award, which I'm assuming the guidance department is going to make sure everybody applies for before they graduate. Types of assistance out there, there's going to be four types, scholarships, grants, work, and loans, and each one of those has a need and non-need-based component to it. So there's all sorts of mixture, if you will, of different types of awards. We look at the scholarships and grants, that's gift aid, that's aid that doesn't have to be repaid or earned, and then work and loans are considered self-help programs where you're helping put yourself through school. What you also need to understand is that there's lots of different sources of financial aid. The federal government is still the largest provider of financial aid today. We'll go over some of their programs. This state is very supportive of higher education. We're going to go over all the state programs as well. Colleges and universities have a bunch of their own monies that they have to distribute as well. There are private resources out there. Has anybody done a FastWeb or a scholarship search yet? That's highly recommended. FastWeb.com is on one of the private search mechanisms on the web. It's the largest database, scholarship database on the web that we know of. There's a few others out there that if you want to Google scholarship search databases, they'll come up. But we highly recommend FastWeb.com. And then finally, other things are employers, and there are a few employers in the area that do actually support higher education in a pretty big way. What we want to talk about is federal government, as I mentioned, is the largest source of financial aid today, provided mostly on the basis of need. I should clarify one thing, going back a little bit. What we want you to do is get involved with the process. The financial aid office of your choice is going to get you as much as they can. With the exception of private money, they're going to try and get you the federal, state, and university money all put in one financial aid package that we will send to you after your son or daughter has been admitted. Some of the things that the government has at its discretion or what it is funded right now, the biggest one is right there on the left-hand side, federal Pell Grant. That's the biggest expenditure. The other one is the federal direct student loan program. There's also PLUS loans, teach grants. Work study I put in the middle because that really doesn't go against your tuition, room, and board. That's something that has to be earned throughout the year. So those are the sources. Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, as the name implies, it's supplemental to Pell. And then the Iraq, Afghanistan Service Grant is really an extension of Pell. But those are the sources of federal money. State, as I mentioned, this state in particular, the state of Florida, is very supportive of higher education. Bright Futures is a great example of that. We're going to come up and show you that. The state residency requirement is usually documented by the university of your choice. The state public universities will document it as part of the admissions process. The private universities, we document it as part of the financial aid process. Difference is they're doing it for tuition purposes, we're doing it for aid purposes to give you the state aid. We have to document your residency. Bright Futures. Right there at the top in the red is the 2021 information. It's gone up slightly in the SAT. The ACT has remained constant or actually went down for the medallion level award, 25 from 26 last year. But as you notice, the SAT has gone up, and that's due to the change in standards on the SAT mostly. They reevaluated the two scores against each other. But for the most part, we're looking at a 29 or 1330 in the SAT for the high end of the academic awards, a 3.5 in high school. It pays 100% of your tuition at a state university. And fees on a private university, it will pay to a private university $211. Basically, that's the equivalent of a state university per credit hour charge. It also has a $600 book allowance or educational expense allowance, which we all use. Florida Medallion pays 75%. It requires all these require community service hours. I don't suspect that's a problem here. And most of your students will easily dwarf those 175 hours. But it will pay $158 per credit hour at a private university and pays 75% of the tuition and fees at a state university. Right there at the bottom is where we took that information from. We're hoping, how to word this. The state government will not release their budget for next year until next May. So everything I'm putting up here is its current rate and current charges that we know of. We don't expect, because of political pressure, any change in Bright Futures. I don't know, I doubt it will go up, mostly because the pressure is too much on the budget. We haven't seen the budget for next year, but I also want to draw your attention to the bottom line there where it says, take what you can pass and pass what you take. Does anybody know what that means? Okay, I give up, I'll tell you. In the state government, they about a few years back decided that they were losing too much money for courses because people have to manage their grade point average. And they were overloading their courses and then dropping the courses that they weren't doing well in an effort to all manage their grade point average. On the medallion level, you have to have a 2.75, and on the academic level, you have to have a 3.0 in college. Just as a matter of, well, information, our average freshman class comes in with an average GPA approaching 4.0, 3.8 to 4.0 in that range. Average freshman GPA at the end of the year, anybody want to take a guess? Oh, somebody should take a guess. Anything, the average is just under 3.0. The point is that the high school GPA is not necessarily reflective of what you're going to do in college. And so we highly recommend starting strong, but you have to manage your GPA and recognize that when you drop a course, now the state's going to ask us to return that money back to the state. That's what that means. Take what you can pass and pass what you take. Beware that if we'll settle your bill at the beginning of the term and have paid in 15 credit hours, but if Johnny has to drop 3 of those, we just sent money back at that rate of $158 or $211. So we have to return money back to the state for that money that the student dropped the course on. Everybody understand that part? Great, moving on. There are 2 other programs I'd like to draw your attention to. One is called EASE, Effective Access to Student Education. That used to be known as the FRAG program. That goes to any full-time undergraduate going to a private university in the state of Florida. They get $2,841 currently in the budget. That's this year's award amount going to them. Every full-time undergraduate going to a private university. We use this at Florida Tech, and we can build on that considerably. I put another reference to Florida Student Financial Aid, so you know the fact sheets. That's what we're drawing on, and it is the current annual amount that we're given from the government, $2,841 if you're going to a private university. At the state university, you're going to get the tuition subsidy. At a private university, the state gives you that. Florida Student Assistance Grant, as it implies, it is a grant. It is need-based. You need to file a FAFSA. It goes to this college of your choice. The maximum per year is $32.60. Very few colleges are able to give that out, but the average award is somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 per year. This is targeted to the Pell-eligible population, and these awards are all stackable. And we will all put these awards onto your award notice and let you know. What we need from you is to make sure you're admitted to the college of your choice and you file a FAFSA. Colleges and universities have an abundance of their own resources. Depends on the college itself, what we have. My budget next year for scholarships is going to be about $60 million, so I give out a few dollars every year to everybody, so I can become best friends with whoever. Private sources, we mentioned a little bit. Sorry, going out a little bit quicker. Private sources, highly recommended a scholarship search. Fastweb.com is my recommended approach. There's others out there. Not one is better than the other. Fastweb claims to be the largest on the database or the internet today, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Highly recommended. It's like the lottery. If you don't play, you can't win. If you look at it statistically, only about 3 to 4% of the population actually is successful in finding an external scholarship that is not controlled by the federal government, state government, or the institution of your choice. But I highly recommend doing a scholarship search. I'll tell you this one story where I had one student that came in to me with a bunch. He spent several hours on each application. And I think he estimated it was almost 3 hours per application. But he came in with 14 outside awards, and he had $20,000 per year towards his education. So it seemed to me that that was worth the 3 hours. Anyway, I digress. Moving on. Employers. As I mentioned before, there are a bunch of employers. Florida Tech, for example, if you work at the university, we usually pay for the dependents' education. So that's a good thing. We also have a program that I'm in charge of called Tuition Exchange Program. So not only do we pay here, but anybody full-time can get into what we call the Tuition Exchange Program, and we might, if their son or daughter goes to one of the participating schools, and there's quite a few of them, their education can be paid for over there as well. So it's a very good program. But we also have a number of employers in the area that pay for their employees to take courses. It's an effort to keep them or retain them for longer term employment. So it's do check with our employers. It's a very good program. I was surprised at how much our companies are paying for education in this area. Next. What we really came for is, this is what I encourage you to get involved with. This is the senior thing. It opens up October 1st for seniors to get there next year. It is using the 2019 tax information. It is a free form, free application for federal student aid. FAFSA.gov is really what you want on your phone, or studentaid.gov on the web. There are, one of the things that we will point out right there at the bottom is the priority dates. Each school is going to set its own priority dates, and so you have to understand that. I would always choose the earliest priority date. You can't get it there too early. You can definitely get it there too late. What happens is that you go through the later in the process. Grant money can dry up. There are limited resources out there that we have, and sometimes you can, if you're too late, we won't be able to give you those. So I highly recommend early is better than later. There are a number of ways to file the FAFSA. Free application on the web. On the web itself, the internet using your laptop is very good and highly recommended because it's got a few benefits to it that we'll go over in a minute. You can also do it right on your phone. There's a couple of downsides to the phone. I haven't seen a paper application in a long, long time, so I'm not sure that's still available, but they say it is theoretically. You can do it over the phone. I've never seen anybody do that, but it's available technically. And then all else fails, your financial aid administrator, FAA means financial aid administrator, has access to the CPS online, and we can actually do it. We'll correct any information, so we will get in there and do that for you. The benefits of using FAFSA on the web, and this is the product that we highly recommend, are the built-in edits. It prevents errors and a bunch of different things, but most importantly, right there at the bottom, it has access to, does this work? No, whatever. The Internal Revenue's data retrieval tool, and that is really cool because it'll bring in your IRS information right into the form, and so it pre-fills the form for you, which is a very, very nice feature. So that's what we highly recommend, FAFSA on the web. It has more timely submission, more detailed instructions. Anytime you put up information on the web, you're allowed to expand on the amount of information that you're giving easily. We think it's a simplified application process, so it really makes it streamlined. Highly recommend FAFSA on the web. This is what it looks like. New users, returning users, it's a login. It's going to ask you if you're the student or the parent, because both pieces are usually needed. There's going to be some questions about whether a student is a dependent or not. Those usually go down, and we'll go over those in a minute. But if you're the parent, you can start the form as well. It will then ask you what's the student's name and date of birth and that type of stuff, so they get the information to the right form. It is, if you walk across any campus, everybody seems to have their head down looking at their phones. So the government was smart enough to build an application that would also go on the phone. You have to go in as FAFSA.gov. I went in there the other day. I was impressed with it. It's a very secure form. The downside of using the phone, the upside is it does track things for you, but it does not have the data retrieval tool. The IRS would not give that up. So the phone is a great way of doing it if you have to do it, but it does not give you the data retrieval tool, which we highly recommend using. And that's kind of selfish, because if we get a form that's filled out with the data retrieved from the IRS, we don't have to verify any of that information, which is really nice. Makes it a simplified process for everybody. This is the tool that we're talking about that goes into the IRS. When you log into FAFSA.gov, it will ask you if you want to bring in your information from the IRS, and it'll actually send you out to the IRS and allow you to bring back the information and pre-fill the form. It's a very nice feature, and it's been up and running for a while, and everybody seems to be happy with it. You can't use this feature for a couple of reasons. The form is going to ask for parent Social Security number. If you didn't file a tax return, obviously you can't use the data retrieval form. If you got married after January 20, you've probably filed your 19 information as a single person. Well, you need the married person's information, so that complicates it, and you can't use it either. Those first 3 digits of 666, I didn't know what that meant until I read more into it. It's one of the islands, but obviously if you have 666 as a Social Security number, it's a bad thing. Filed a non-U.S. tax return, obviously you can't go into the IRS and get a non-U.S. tax return. Married filing head of household, that's one of those things where we're needing 2 incomes, but you filed singularly, and so it's only going to pick up 1. It can't pick up 2 different incomes, it can only pick up 1. Neither parent entered a valid Social Security number. Obviously you can't go in and get anything, or all zeros and stuff like that. So there are a few reasons that you can't use the data retrieval, but most of those I hope don't apply, and with any luck you can use this form because it does make it a whole lot simpler. One of the things that is needed out there when you're filing the form is an FSA ID, Federal Student Aid ID. It allows you access to the information in the Federal Student Aid systems, and there are a bunch of them, but both the parent and student need their own IDs. When you're filing the form, the student has to certify their information and the parent has to certify theirs. Only one parent has to certify their information, but both of them will need, the student needs their own ID and a parent needs their own ID. If you want to see what the form is going to ask you, feel free. There is a worksheet as well out there on the web. They can download it so you're not surprised by any of the questions or anything like that. So FAFSA on the web does have a worksheet. It makes it very simple to look at. The general information it's going to look for is right there at the top. You've got to be accurate with your Social Security number, otherwise it really goes wacky quickly. Marital status, citizenship status. It does ask about drug convictions. There is a requirement, selective service for men as well, and higher education level completed by mom and dad. It's fairly simple, not too bad. Student dependency, there are a bunch of questions that it asks about student dependency. For the most part, a student has to be less than 24. They're dependent. If they're not married, if they don't have a child, not part of the armed services and that type of stuff. For the most part, most students are going to be dependent. That means they need their parents' information on the form. This is the type of information they'll be looking for. Assets and income of parent and student are put on the form and can be retrieved. Very simple. Same stuff. The form does allow for 10 different colleges at once. And basically you're going to have to tell the form, I'm going to go to this college and I plan to live on campus, at home, or off campus. All those things will be right on the form for 10 colleges at once. The information will go into the CPS, I believe that's coming up. Signatures required I got ahead of myself. Signatures required anytime you submit either the initial form or the changes. You need 2 signatures on the form. everybody's got to be in there and say, yes, that's the information, and we completed it. So anytime you submit the form, both the student and parent have to sign it. Where did I miss that number? Oh, right after this. Okay, great. Frequent errors. Absolutely check Social Security numbers. Both parents and students' Social Security numbers are collected on the form, mostly because they can go in and grab the IRS information, so that's very, very important. Divorced and separated parents. We always get this question, so I'm going to go over it. If you're divorced and separated, you start with a student. It's who the student lived the most with in the last 12 months, and then that parent is responsible for filling out the FAFSA form. If they lived equally amount with both parents, then you go to who provided the most support, and finally who actually put them on the tax return is the final decider. But the first and foremost one is who the student lived the most with in the last 12 months, and then that parent is responsible for filling out the form. If that parent's remarried, the step-parent's information has to go on the form as well. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. That's usually the most income taxes paid if somebody did not use the data retrieval system. This used to be a bigger problem than it is today because we're using 2-year-old information. 2019 information was hopefully filed last April, and so taxes paid comes right off the tax form and can come in right in from the data retrieval. When we used to do it, we used to have a lot of people that hadn't filed taxes yet because it was using 2020 information, and we didn't file that until next April. And so people were hurrying to get their information in, and they would often use just a withheld number. That's the wrong number. We're actually looking for the taxes paid that comes right off the tax return. When everybody communicates in a FAFSA form, the FAFSA starts with the student and family, goes into the central processing system, that's that thing in the middle, and then is sent out to all the colleges that you put on the form. It goes back from the colleges if we have to make corrections back through the central processing system, or the student can make changes, it goes back through the central processing system as well. Everything goes through the CPS, central processing system, out to either the student or to the college. It's a wonderful system. We pick it up in our mailbox on a daily basis. Email notifications. If there's a valid email sent in with the form, you will get that back in an email form. They will send you back a notification saying, yes, here's the information you put in. It regurgitates it back out. If you need to make changes, you can feel free to make changes. That's a good thing to do. If you've used the data retrieval, you want to avoid making a change because that will invalidate the data retrieval. If they do not have a valid email address, they will send the student aid report back to you as a paper product. It will come back to you in the mail. Not a big deal. And this is what the college gets. We get an institutional summary of information form, ISER form. It comes back to us. We pick these all up electronically. We haven't seen paper in a long, long time. 1/3 of our population is going to be selected for verification, and that's basically we have to make sure we're using the right information on the form. Whatever you've submitted, we have to document it, use tax returns to do that. That's why we like the data retrieval process so much. We will be asking a lot of you to submit forms to us, and the colleges will do various parts. Hang on for a second. My annual event, I always lose my voice. Colleges do have to document the information used on the form before we can pay out federal and student aid or state aid. And so that's what we do as part of a process known as verification. I do want to go over special circumstances, especially given the current environment that we're operating in. It's very important. The form asks for 2019 information, and you don't have a choice. You have to put down 2019 information. However, special circumstances are the form assumes that 2019 is an accurate predictor of when your child is going to go to school in 2021. That may or may not be true. If it's not true, you have what we would call special circumstances. And that means the school can take a different time frame or a different approach to the needs analysis that it's going to use for your son or daughter. At Florida Tech, we take this very seriously. We want to make sure we're using the right information. We don't want to get anybody there for just 1 year. Our goal is to make sure we can graduate somebody, so we're trying to get you the financial aid package that will work for the family for 4 years, not just for their initial year. That's our philosophy at Florida Tech. We want a financial aid package that will work for 4 years. We will make the necessary changes to the form to get an income that's reliable for 4 years. That may not be possible in some cases, but we're going to do our best to try and get what we think is the revolving income that we can rely on for 4 years and use that to drive the funding formulas for the Pell Grant and everything else that we're going to do for you. That's our philosophy at Florida Tech, because we want to basically get you a reliable, renewable package, not just the one you're going to use in your first year. So if you're going to do special conditions, you do want to know the implications. If things are not what they used to be right now, in many cases that's true, but you expect them to return to better times in the future, you need to know what the school will do in the future as well. And what we're trying to do is trying to figure out what we can rely on for 4 years. Not an easy job this year. It's the incredible news that we had coming into this fall is that we did not have too many, we call these professional judgments, that we had to adjust. We were able to work with families within our own need-based assistance and get them the packages they need to enroll. And we had a pretty good fall year, better than we expected given the pandemic. But special conditions, again, if 2019 is not an accurate predictor of 2021 when the student's going to go to school, you may have special conditions, and you do want to talk to the financial aid administrator at the college of your choice. They can make a change to the form when they document it and say, okay, this is going to change. We're going to use different income. We're going to use different assets. We're going to use different things. Probably won't change the assets, but they can change the income, and they can change the time frame that they're looking at. So that's special conditions. This is a picture of all the things that can go wrong: unusual medical expenses, death and divorce of a family, loss of employment. All those things apply, and means that 2019, when you file the tax return, is probably not going to be an accurate predictor of 2021. Those are special circumstances, and the financial aid officer at the school of your choice can make those changes, and you want to ask them about it. I use us as an example. Now, Florida Tech is a private school. We charge probably $43,000 a year in tuition and fees. And I wanted to give us an example, the benefit of filing a form and what you can do. If there's a stretch, it's right there at the top. Pell, SUG, and FSAG are all targeted to the same population with a family contribution less than $5,600. That would require a zero family contribution, but you can, in those three programs, get in excess of $8,000. That's probably true at our place, and more than our place, probably true at most institutions, depending on where you're going. Florida Ease money is restricted to a private university in the state of Florida, full-time undergraduate going to a private university in the state of Florida. That's an automatic that's easy to get for everybody that comes in as a full-time undergraduate. Bright Futures, those are the two levels. If you take 15 hours per term, you're going to get 30 hours. That is at the private university rate. Either $47.40 or $69.30 is the private university rate. Florida Tech grant to an incoming, the average Florida Tech grant to an incoming full-time resident of the state of Florida was approaching $20,000 last year. On the right-hand side, we have a very special program that we do for the best Bright Futures. We offer full tuition and fees, and so the combination of all those things add up to full tuition and fees at Florida Tech. That make sense? That's the Florida Tech Distinguished Scholar is what I was just talking about, and what we need is somebody to apply for admissions before February 1st, apply the FAFSA before February 1st, and be an academic scholar. And we're after the best of the best to get those. We make 100 of those offers a year. Complete financial aid package, if you will. Again, with room and board, we approach $55,000. That's our complete financial aid package, and I just put it up there to encourage you to apply. But that's the quick overview of financial aid. I went through it quickly. I'll be happy to stay here and answer as many questions as you have. Did I miss anything, Joe? It's a great question. If you think your family's income, depending on where you're going, our average income now that I'm serving with the FAFSA form, and that includes grant money, is approaching $100,000. That doesn't mean everybody gets it, but for the most part, I'm fairly confident that we can do that. So it depends on where you go. The FAFSA form is required even if the student wants to borrow money. Even if they wanted to borrow just a little bit of money, the FAFSA form would be required. So it opens up loan opportunities for both the student and the parent. It doesn't hurt you in any way, and it's free of charge. So I'm always an advocate for filing it no matter what. It can't hurt you for admission. It can't hurt you for financial aid. It does open up more opportunities from work study to everything else. But if you don't file, you won't ever know what they could do for you. So I highly recommend it. Any other questions, suggestions? Please get involved. It's not a bad process. Well,
one other question. For the EASE grant, there's no requirement for the FAFSA for that part. That's if they're applying to a private school and decided to attend, that would be an automatic.
Right. Each private school will have their own way of documenting residency. We will have to document residency, and that's why we do it, is for the EASE grant. So each school will have their own method of documenting residency, usually a form of a driver license, and it's based on the parent's residency for a dependent child. So wherever the parent lives, we usually need like a voter form and a driver's license just to document residency, 2 forms of ID to get you the EASE grant. And that again was this year's rate at $28.41, and we're praying that's the same rate next year. We will see next year's budget, unfortunately, in May. So we will all be guessing, and I go to a meeting at the end of this month to trying to figure out if those guesses are good or bad. We'll figure it out. Any other questions, answers, suggestions? Popular meal places? Well, Joe, do you have anything to add?
Only other thing, if you don't mind mentioning the CSS profile.
Very good. 2 forms. The FAFSA is the federal mandated form, and it drives a thing known as federal methodology. That means we're using exactly what the government dictates as the methodology to determine the family's ability to pay, or what I would refer to as the index of financial strength. There is a different form out there for some of the more elite and select schools, especially in the Northeast, Ivy Leagues in particular. And if you're looking at one of those schools, you're probably going to be asked to fill out the college profile form. The college profile form does collect more information. For example, divorced parents, they'll ask for both parents' information. It will ask about the home. In the federal form, we don't ask. Primary residence is not included in the assets. In the college profile form, it is. So there are a bunch of little differences, subtle differences between the forms. This is the college profile form is used by schools that usually commit to meeting 100% of need, and they have a lot of their own money at stake. And so they're going to find every possible resource the student has before they necessarily meet their need. So that's what it's used for. It's used, and a number of colleges use it. Mostly the very elite and select colleges in the Northeast and across the country have adopted the college profile for what is known as institutional methodology. That means they've doctored up not just the federal methodology, which you have to do anyway. You would have to do a FAFSA form to get federal money, and then the profile form to get institutional money. So some of those colleges will be asking for a college profile form. It's a little bit longer, not necessarily harder. College Board does a great job. So it's a good form, and it will be required at some of the colleges, especially in the Northeast. Is that a fair statement? Any other questions or answers, suggestions? If you have any questions and about the form or the information presented, please feel free to get them to the guidance department. They will not hesitate to call us and ask us the question, and we'll find them the answer one way or the other. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I was just going to say, I'm going to speak into the mic so they can record this. If you heard him mention more than once the opportunity to get information about the schools, the college's financial aid process and so forth, they are the resource. They're the experts. They deal with it all the time. And I strongly encourage you. He's offered to answer questions, and certainly we will take advantage of that. But beyond that, too, the different schools that your kids may be applying to, it's a great way to get your answers, certainly, but then even kind of learn about the customer service at those prospective schools. So just don't hesitate to ask your questions. I think that's a huge part of it. A lot of money involved here. So thank you again for coming. I hope you found it helpful, and watch for an email with the PowerPoint. And
follow up on that?
yes.
Something she reminded me of, and I should have mentioned it part of my presentation, every school that participates in federal student aid has to put up on their site a thing called a net price calculator. So for the underclassmen, it may be a good thing to go out there and look for a school. If you're interested in a school and want to know what they could do for you, it does take a little bit of time, but most of them are very simplified forms of the FAFSA, and they can give you a pretty quick readout of what the school might be able to do for you. A thing called a net price calculator, every school has to have one on their website, so you might want to look at it at the school of your choice. It's a very quick and easy way. Quick is maybe a stretch, but it's an easy way to get a good idea of what the school could do for you in a need-based situation. So highly recommend looking. If you're looking at a particular school, net price calculators are all out there, and you can compare schools. There's a couple other resources out there that do it for you. College Scorecard, College Navigator all do the same thing.
I'm getting a remote question. First, can we back up and show your slide for the Florida Tech Scholar Program?
Sure. Oops. I thought that was the one.
Distinguished Scholar?
Yeah. Did I do this? Did it go too far?
I don't know. Does it let you back up?
No, it won't let me back up.
On the keyboard?
Where's
I
the
can't
keyboard?
see the keyboard.
Let's do this.
Oh, okay. There it is.
Oh, there it is. Back to the back. That part or back further?
I think that's it right there.
Okay.
And so it's some people live streaming that are watching.
Oh, very nice.
And there was a second question, if I can read it. It's kind of blurry.
Those are my favorite kind.
So it's just reiterating, is the FAFSA something parent and student should fill out together?
Yes.
And does the student do their part and parent do their part separately?
They can do them together. There's an interesting poll out there that shows people actually it's almost divided 3 different ways. Parent does it all, student does it all, and then they do it together.
As long as they get their answers?
As long as they get the answers, and using the IRS data retrieval tool pulls information in, and both of them will have the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
That was it?
Well, thanks for the opportunity again. Please feel free to use us as a resource. We're right down the street. And again, you'll have this available. And if you have any other questions, I wish you the best of luck. Fun time for you. Well, other than the pandemic, other than that minor incident, Mrs. Lincoln. Just kidding. Have a great night. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Put this down here.